All right, you guys shut up. I want to talk about Princess Diaries. I really thought between my roommate and me, I would be able to find a tiara in this household for me to wear during that intro. I feel like we own like 3 pairs of fairy wings and like 5 corsets between us, so I don't know how this happened. So, you know those movies that you loved as a kid, where you had a relatable protagonist, probably some eccentric teenager who just thinks the world is against them and nobody's on their side. And as a kid, you really identify with that. And then you rewatch the movie years later and you're like, oh no, actually, everyone else had a point and you're being kind of overdramatic and a huge brat. The Princess Diaries is not one of those movies. This 2001 teen comedy about a San Franciscan high schooler who finds out that she is secretly a princess and no one told her for reasons contains some of the most messed up mentors and fair weather friends you are likely to find in a G-rated Disney movie. Our quirky protagonist, Mia Thermopolis, is completely correct to rant through her retainer about all the unfair circumstances that they got her into. There are a few worthwhile companions, but even they are not beyond reproach. And so I have decided to rank all the Princess Diaries characters from least toxic to most. In terms of the parameters of this, I'm not going to be ranking characters who are obviously meant to be villainous, only those who are supposed to function as a support for Mia in some way, whether or not they are actually successful at this. The number one least toxic characters in this movie, the Prime Minister of Genovia and his wife. If you haven't done a recent rewatch of this movie, you might not even remember this couple, but they are the real ones. At Mia's first public event, an extravagant dinner, they are there to help this poor 15-year-old through all the nitty-gritty details of this ordeal without judgment, while her grandmother, the queen, sits miles away. Mia makes a fool of herself by giving herself a brain freeze eating sorbet. These middle-aged dignitaries give themselves legitimate brain freezes in order to get the attention off her. They just met this girl and they are ride or die. Not to mention, I'm sure they have their opinion about whether or not Mia should assume her place as the heir to Genovia, what with them running the whole Genovian government. But unlike everyone else, they are not forcing their opinions on her or telling her what to do. They're like, don't even worry about it. Let's just focus on eating your soup and we'll deal with the rest later. The next least toxic is Jo. Now, you might think that the Queen's head of security would have better things to do than chauffeur around a teen and give her sage wisdom, but Jo is ready to jump in and quickly becomes Mia's most reliable adult figure. You could call him her Grandpa Joe. Jo is an effective mentor because he is meeting Mia at her level. He's giving her advice on how to deal with mean friends because even though she is the weight of an entire country on her back, he knows there's nothing scarier than teen girls. He's also the only person who's able to find Mia when she gets stuck in her car on the way to the ball. I do have one note for this guy, and it doesn't actually have to do with Mia. It's when he's putting the moves on Queen Clarice and he leans in and whispers, "You've been wearing black for too long." Let me remind you, the reason she is wearing black is because her son died 2 months ago. I don't know what it is about this dude, but everyone in the movie seems to want his family to get over his death like yesterday. I personally wouldn't have used such a reminder as a pickup line, but what do I know because Queen Clarice seems down to clown. Third least toxic character is Michael, Mia's love interest and her best friend Lily's brother. Michael is the one peer of Mia who treats her exactly the same before and after she becomes a princess, with the small exception of him being the straight guy that gets to say, wow, 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 wow. when the main character becomes beautiful by straightening her hair and taking off her glasses. Wow. He seems to both genuinely like her as the shy, frumpy, invisible kid and the more high-profile, glammed-up princess. There are a few moments where our boy slips. When Lily, oh, don't worry, we'll get to Lily. When Lily starts absolutely tearing into Mia about all the changes that have been happening, basically making Mia cry, we have to wait till Lily directly asks him if he agrees with her before he says no. Like, you could have come to her defense a little stronger, my guy. He and Lily are already established to have that typical adversarial sibling relationship, so it wouldn't have been out of character for him to shut her down a little more firmly, as opposed to Mia, who is wildly timid. The other moment, and this one is a little more complex, so stay with me. At one point, Michael asks Mia if she wants to come over and listen to his band practice. Already not a super strong start, but this is 22 whole years before the Barbie movie, which was apparently men's first hint that women don't always love to sit and listen to music being played at them for hours at a time. But Mia seems down and straight up asks Michael if it's a date, and Michael says no. Shortly after, Mia is asked to the big school beach party by Josh, the popular boy that she has a crush on. Can't relate to school-organized beach parties as a Canadian, but it seems like a big deal. But of course, it's on the night that Michael asked her to hang out. Now, is it good form to cancel on friends when more exciting plans come up? Of course not. And do we know that Michael is a good guy who likes Mia for who she is, and Josh is a clout chaser who may be into foot stuff? Also, yes, but from Mia's point of view, one boy invited her to do a totally flexible activity as friends, and the other asked her to a cool once-a-year event as dates. So yes, she asks Michael for a rain check so that she can go out with Josh. And this is played as Mia losing herself and betraying her friends. And when she inevitably finds out that Josh is a jerk, she has to spend the rest of the movie making it up to Michael, who is heartbroken and angry. But let this be a lesson to guys, or anyone else who plays these kind of games. Don't ask someone on a Schrodinger's date where you avoid the risk of rejection by being obtuse in your intentions, but then later act like they owe you romance or other things that you can't mention in a Disney movie. Be transparent and upfront, or else the Joshes of the world will. Slipping down the slide of toxicity, we have Clarice, the queen of Genovia herself and Mia's grandmother. This is a character that could have been so much worse, but isn't, because she's played by Julie Andrews. That's not being facetious. Apparently in the book, Clarissa is much colder and less developed, but they literally cast Mary Poppins, so they softened her up a little bit. Clarice's main sin is kind of the sin of the movie itself, which is that this family, of which she is the patriarch, decided to keep Mia's lineage a complete secret from her, pretend she didn't exist all this time, and then show up suddenly and expect her to get on board and quite literally become a perfect princess in a matter of weeks. Of course, if this weren't the case, we really wouldn't have a movie, but from an in-universe perspective, was there any reason they couldn't have kept her a little bit more in the know? Let her visit Genovia, get to know her family, make her aware that he is the heir to the throne and that's why he's not around a lot, but still be able to keep her out of the public eye and let her have a normal life. Clarice does seem to care for Mia, but she is also the person that seems to have the least problem saddling this teen with the responsibility of a country's future, and low-key judging her for not being completely prepared for this endeavor, despite, again, having had no knowledge of it for the first 15 years of her life. But after being responsible for the country yourself for most of your life, not to mention an arranged marriage, your youngest son marrying a commoner, your oldest son abdicating, your youngest son divorcing the commoner so he can inherit the throne, your husband dying, then your youngest son dying, Your perspective of what is reasonable to lay at someone's feet might be a little wonky. She does seem keen to not make the same mistake twice, so when Mia is leaning towards not taking the throne, she does let her know that she is still family and welcome with them. She does also eventually make an effort to get to know Mia's world, doing a little playful romp through San Francisco. Although I am still unsure of the ethics of making up a knighthood for a bus driver and policeman to get your granddaughter out of a driving violation. Next up, we have the real queen, Vice Principal Gupta, played by Canadian legend Sandra Oh. This woman is elitist, opportunistic, and borderline negligent, and we love her for it. Her most toxic moment is not how she doesn't even bother to pretend to know Mia's name at the beginning of the film, not how she fawns over Queen Clarice while brazenly ignoring her student's mother, but actually how she lets Mia assault her antagonist Lana with an ice cream cone near the end of the film. I get it, Lana's terrible and turnaround is fair play, but maybe you could just make the smallest attempt to stop any bullying or violence at your school instead of basing your response on how much you like the student and how lazy you're feeling. And she's vice principal. Where is the principal? Hard to blame her for being a shoddy educator if she's running around doing two people's jobs. Where is Tim Meadows when you need him? Next up, there's Paolo, the comical stylist of ambiguous nationality and sexuality. Now, obviously, there's the beauty standard stuff. This guy is so ready to tear apart this girl's self-esteem for the crime of having curly hair. But I think more significant and way more brushed over than that is the fact that he basically doxes this secret teen royal. Let's remember that Mia's claim to the throne would probably be highly controversial. I mean, she's an American child of divorce who has never been to Genovia. Many people would surely like to eliminate her from the picture, both for their own gain and their political beliefs. So, while it might seem dramatic, Paolo alerting the media to the situation, including Mia's name, appearance, and the school she goes to, without giving her or anyone any clue before it's too late, is putting her in an enormous amount of physical danger. And instead of getting arrested for treason or at least breaking an NDA, they bring him back for another makeover montage in the sequel. Okay, we're gonna do it. We're going to talk about Lily. Now, at first glance, this character just seems like your average quirky best friend who was too much fun with hair ties, but in recent years, she has joined the pantheon of characters that the internet has retroactively decided suck, along with Ross Geller, Carrie Bradshaw, and Dumbledore. Nate from The Devil Wears Prada, another movie where they try to convince us that Anne Hathaway was at any point ugly, has often been included on this list, but I have seen him have his defenders. If you're wondering if there's any characters who pulled it Uno reverse and managed to repair their reputation over time, it's Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. They really had us believing she was the bad guy because she would rather her daughters marry ugly men than be homeless. Lily is an awkward, dorky teenager who seems to take great solace in the fact that at least her best friend is more awkward and dorkier than her. Every time Mia alters the status quo by having a rich, mysterious grandmother, getting a makeover, and finally coming out of the royal closet as a princess, Lily is pissed. She tells her how stupid she looks, that she's a sellout, and all the reasons why she would be a crappy royal. And let's not forget, she also tells her that she should probably be over her father's death because it happened 2 whole months ago. Sorry, Philippe, haters gonna hate. Sure, it's understandable that she doesn't want to lose her best friend either to fame or popularity or the nation of Genovia, but she jumps straight to tearing her down in order to try to prevent this. It's kind of sad because she thinks the only way Mia will continue to be her friend is if she continues to be a loser, which turns out to be untrue because she makes it to the sequel, whereas Michael gets replaced by Chris Pine. For all the hate she gets, though, Lily is the only character, besides Mia, who ends up taking any accountability for her actions. She full-on admits that she was jealous and had a bad attitude because she was scared of losing Mia. And she actually changes her tune on her being a princess, albeit very suddenly. I think she's also the only person who brings up what eventually leading a country could mean for Mia in terms of having the power to enact positive change on a global scale, instead of it just meaning that some bad rich European family doesn't replace the good rich European family as the most important rich European family. So for that reason, and this may surprise you, Lily is not the most toxic character on this list. Let's talk about Helen, Mia's mom. She really had us all fooled with the awesome converted firehouse apartment, the cool job, the heart-to-hearts with her daughter while rock climbing and throwing darts at balloons filled with paint. But what it comes down to is this. Helen is the character who had the most responsibility to Mia and acts the least responsibly. And the most frustrating thing is that she has the nerve to act long-suffering about it. Oh, woe is me, I'm just the single mom of a dramatic teenage daughter who won't stop screaming at me about stupid things like being lied to her entire life. To recap, Helen and Philippe fell in love, got married, and had Mia, all without giving much thought as to how she would fit into the royal family because, hey, he's just the second son, so anything goes, I guess. But then Philippe's brother abdicates as heir to the throne, meaning Philippe is now in line to be king, so now they have to get divorced. Because Helen was fine with being like a tertiary royal, but not a primary royal, and apparently the people of Genovia are fine with a king who was once married to a commoner but got divorced, but not someone who is currently married to a commoner. Honestly, the story would make a lot more sense if Helen and Philippe just like had a fling and Mia was a happy little surprise. But again, Disney movie, so they got married. So these two go full parent trap and create the most ill-advised parenting plan ever. Helen will raise Mia alone and Philippe will have no contact with her except the odd birthday card and such. They couldn't just cut him out of the picture completely, and God forbid they tell her the truth. So instead, Mia spends her whole life thinking that her father just doesn't care enough to have a real relationship with her. And Helen thinks this is all worth it because it will save Mia the pain of a childhood in the limelight. Until it doesn't. Because when Clarice shows up after Philippe's death and wants to meet Mia, Helen's just like, guess it's time. Off you go to meet Mary Poppins. I could give you a heads up, but it's best you hear this news that'll change your life from this woman who you've never met and has shown to care more about the legacy of her family than the well-being of its actual members. We've already talked about how Clarice is not blameless in this wild arrangement, but Helen is Mia's caregiver and the very reason she's alive. Even though she thought she was making the best decisions in each moment, I feel like a lot of this could have been prevented if she and Philippe had just thought more than one step ahead at any given time. And when Mia comes home pissed, Helen acts like she had no power over this situation and was just trying to stop Mia from getting hurt. And we could chalk up a lot of these decisions to plot, like these actions were necessary to give us a movie. But there's one thing that takes Helen from being a hapless plot device to an absolutely infuriating example of selfishness. And this is when, shortly after Mia learns the truth about her lineage, Helen goes to a meeting with one of her teachers and comes back with a date. I don't know what's going on with parents from teen movies of this era. It seems like they're always either dating the kid's teacher or the parents of the kid's love interest. Actually, I just rewatched Saved the other day, and the mother in that manages to pull a 2-for-1 in that department. But this would be such an embarrassing thing to happen to a high schooler under any circumstances. And Helen has chosen like the week in which Mia's life has been turned upside down to get freaky with the English teacher. And when Mia shows just a bit of disbelief that her mother would do this, she throws her hands in the air and says, "I just can't do anything right, can I?" Like, no, apparently not. Your daughter is still reeling from this major bombshell, and you are finding new ways to get her bullied by her peers. I know she has the right to be happy outside of her relationship with her daughter, but timing and a little compassion can go a long way, and no amount of paint speckled denim overalls or quirky interior design choices can make up for that. Looking back at this list, I do notice that most of the guys have landed safely at the start, and most of the women are in the back end. I'm hoping this isn't some inner bias where I have higher expectations for women than men and is instead indicative of this film having a lot of really complex female characters who are important to Mia's story and thus have more of an opportunity to do her dirty. Plus, if Philippe were alive, he would have 100% made the finale for abandoning the daughter he chose to have and acting all noble about it, but he gets a pass because he's dead and everyone really wants you to get over that. What do you think? Did I get the order right? Was I a little too hard on all the manic pixie dream moms out there? Are there other movies you'd like to see a similar breakdown for? If so, let me know. And if you enjoyed, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, have a delicious day. I'll just pretend to have a tiara. Thank you for being here today.